Good afternoon, everybody. Muaddim Lissimcha. Welcome to the Israel Brief, brought to you by Lay of the Land, with me, Rolene Marks. And let me just tell you, I've missed you guys. It's been a few days. We have been busy celebrating all the different Chagim. In this case, it is Sukkot, the Feast of the Tabernacles or Booths, and it is just beautiful to see the Sukkot dotted around Israel. Earlier today, Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing, which takes place during Chol HaMoed Sukkot, the days of Sukkot, took place at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, and a beautiful, beautiful moment to see. But we've missed you guys, and we try and bring you those top stories making headlines every Monday to Thursday right here on our various social media platforms. And many of you have said to us that we don't hear these stories in the mainstream media. So we need your help. Please share if you're viewing on Facebook or on YouTube. This way, we get to see Israel's voice represented as far and wide as possible. You be our ambassadors. That is what we're tasking you with. But that's not why you called. You're here for the headlines, so let's get into them. And we begin with the squad in the United States. The squad, or the Progressive Democrats as they are known there, put forward a motion yesterday in a vote on the budget to keep the government funded. Now, part of this budget was $1 million that has been allocated to replenishing Iron Dome missiles and making sure that Israel is equipped with Iron Dome systems. Now, they put forward a motion largely pushed by AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the representative from New York, from the 14th district there, to cut this funding, or at least exclude it from this bill. Now, she has been saying, or her rationale is that it is unfair to Palestinians and harms Palestinians. However, as I will explain in a few minutes, the Iron Dome does not fire rockets towards any civilians or counteracts any rockets fired. Largely, the Iron Dome is responsible for intercepting those rockets and projectiles being fired at Israeli civilians. In a phone call, our Foreign Minister Yair Lapid with House Majority Leader Stijn Hoyer had a conversation. Hoyer reiterated that this was just a technical problem, a technical glitch, and the budget, which is expected to pass later today, will include that allocation, and that Israel enjoys bipartisan support, strong bipartisan support by both Democrats and Republicans. In fact, he went further to say that there might be a standalone vote to ensure that this goes through. And of course, we will bring you any updates on that. But just a reminder about the Iron Dome system. Let's take a look at how it works. So the Iron Domes, which are rolled out during times of increased conflagration with Israel and terror entities in the Gaza Strip who fire rockets and projectiles towards Israeli civilians. How this works is that the algorithm, or the radar, which is part of the Iron Dome, plots where those rockets and projectiles will land. If they see that it's going to not land or is not targeted towards any civilian infrastructure, it doesn't intercept, and they normally land in open fields, or in some cases in the Mediterranean Sea. In cases where it plots that it's headed straight towards civilians, what happens is that the code red or warning system will sound in whatever areas it is plotted to fall in, and those civilians will run to their shelters or take cover. While this happens, the Iron Dome system will fire off its interceptor rockets, eliminating those rockets and projectiles, effectively saving the lives of tens of thousands, sometimes even hundreds and thousands and millions of Israeli civilians. However, what people who are trying to support this bill don't understand is that not only does the Iron Dome protect Israeli civilians, it protects Palestinian civilians as well. Because if heaven forbid, we are in a scenario where we didn't have the Iron Dome systems and we were having rockets fired non-stop like we had in May, where over 4,000 rockets were fired towards Israeli civilians, there would be untold carnage on both sides, because it would mean civilians killed on Israel's side and untold damage to property, and it would also mean that Israel would have to send its army boots on the ground in Gaza, and that results in civilian casualties, because as we know, terror entities like Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the like hide within their civilian infrastructure. So Iron Dome is first-class protection for civilians on both sides. And in other news, we have all been waiting with bated breath to see what will happen with the UN Conference Against Racism, also known as Durban 4, which will go ahead at UN headquarters later today. Now, this marks the 20th anniversary of the original conference, which took place in Durban, South Africa in 2001, which absolutely descended into anti-Semitic, anti-Israel chaos, which resulted in countries like Israel and the United States walking out, but also, more worryingly, set the stage for the BDS movement, the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, and legitimized mainstream anti-Semitism. We have seen this over the last 2 decades, this growing rise in anti-Semitism, which is often deadly. Now, to combat this, Israel has embarked on quite an aggressive campaign towards states about the participation and the possibilities of this descending into yet another Israel-bashing anti-Semitic free-for-all like it did 20 years ago. To date, about 32 countries have publicly stated that they will not be participating. And over the last day or so, we have been joined by countries like Romania, Ukraine, and Poland. Poland, very, very significant because of the recent tensions between our two countries. Countries from Central America like Honduras and from South America like Uruguay. So what we have here is a global stand saying quite strongly that we will not be participating in any such sham conference because of fears that it will just disintegrate into an anti-Semitic free-for-all. And we're holding our thumbs. Maybe we will see more countries boycott or even walk out of proceedings later today. Now, while this is taking place, the annual Super Bowl, which is also known as the United Nations General Assembly, is taking place. This is when leaders from around the world who are member states come and they speak, they give their annual speeches to the assembled UNGA. Our Prime Minister Naftali Bennett will have his chance on the 27th, but yesterday opening up proceedings was President Biden from the United States. Now, in his quite lengthy speech in which he touched on issues like climate change, he opened up by saying that this was the first time in 20 years that he stood at the United Nations representing America, which was not at war. Amongst the many things in his speech, he also reiterated America's strong support for its ally Israel and belief in a two-state solution. He also was quite emphatic to state that while America supports a two-state solution, nobody should be expecting that anytime soon. He also went on to stress that the United States will not allow Iran to gain nuclear weapons. Later on in the day, it was the Iranian president's chance to make his speech in front of the UNGA. That's the newly elected Ibrahim Raisi. And of course, as was expected, he attacked Israel, calling Israel a regime that murders children and women. And we would just like to say, people in glass houses, Mr. President, people in glass houses. So I'm sure many of you watching are waiting to see whether your Prime Minister or President will speak sometime soon, but we here will keep you updated on the speeches that are relevant to Israel. So those are our top stories making headlines today and what you missed over the last couple of days. And you may have also missed out on some of our original content, which can be found on our website at www.layoftheland.online. You can read our resident advocate Craig Snoyman's article about his memories of Durban 1. It's also up on our Facebook page. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a follow. Invite your friends to as well. And of course, please share this brief. We're also on YouTube at the Israel Brief. You know what to do. Like, share, and subscribe by clicking on the red subscribe button. And we're on Twitter. You can find us at Lay of the Land with the digit 5. That's at Lay of the Land 5. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief. I wish you again Muadem L'Simcha Chag Sameach, and we'll speak again tomorrow.